In the not-so-distant future, the astral station Pollux, an independent scientific base orbiting Mars, becomes the stage for events that transcend human comprehension. The six-person crew, hand-picked specialists for a research mission on possible life forms on the Red Planet, begins to face something that was not in the plans of the space agency that sent them. It all started with small failures in the communication systems and unusual records of electromagnetic interference. Commander Rafael Oliveira, a 42-year-old veteran astronaut known for his composure and rigor in space missions, decided they needed to investigate personally. Robotics specialist Lucio Martins, 29, assembled a drone to map the nearby Martian surface, but the equipment began transmitting distorted images and, at times, scenes that seemed to show shadowy figures moving rapidly among the rocks. Nights on the station, which in space are equivalent to long cycles of darkness interspersed with brief periods of sunlight, became increasingly unsettling. Systems engineer Helena Castro, 34, began reporting whispering voices inside the stations. Tunnels, voices that did not correspond to any team member. Security cameras, installed in strategic locations, frequently captured flashes of light and shadows that seemed to materialize and disappear in fractions of a second. Then, one morning, the team's medical assistant, Igor Mendes, 26, vanished without a trace. The door to the laboratory where he was conducting experiments was found locked, with no signs of forced entry, and internal sensors did not register his presence. The search for Igor was frantic, and all team members began to feel a growing sense of dread, as if something invisible was watching them intently. At the same time, previous mission logs showed inexplicable alterations, corrupted scientific data, encoded messages sent to Earth that no one could interpret, and a secret file that seemed to document an ancient Martian presence with characteristics bordering on the supernatural. What was happening on Pollux? Was it just a technical problem or something much darker? Fear began to corrode the crew's minds, and the line between reality and hallucination became tenuous. The following days were a slow descent into psychological chaos. With Igor gone, the rest of the crew tried to maintain their routine, but the shadow of anguish hung like an impending storm. Rafael imposed himself as leader, ordering that every minute be documented and that no decision be made without consensus. Helena, even with her nerves frayed, continued trying to decipher the mysterious codes of the corrupted transmissions, while Lucio spent hours examining the drone data, which now seemed more like a specter than equipment. Then, something worse happened. During a routine check in the storage section, systems technician Daniel Freitas, 31, was found in a state of deep shock, muttering incomprehensible phrases and staring blankly at an empty spot. According to Helena, he began talking about portals between worlds and about a presence that passed through walls, invisible and ravenous. Before anyone could intervene, Daniel fainted, and when he regained consciousness, he remembered nothing. In the midst of this turmoil, space biologist Marina Lopez, 28, discovered an anomaly in the reading of the Martian samples. The material seemed to emit a strange energy, almost as if it were alive and conscious. During the night, security cameras captured something unbelievable. The very structure of the station seemed to vibrate, and an entire corridor was filled with a dense red mist, like a bloody veil. Translucent figures seemed to walk among the crew members, touching them, leaving invisible marks. The atmosphere became unbearable. Lights began to flicker in random sequences. The temperature fluctuated without reason, and to make matters worse, coded messages, which Helena was working to decipher, began to form threatening phrases, speaking of judgment and punishment. Fear turned into panic when one of the life support systems registered dangerously low oxygen levels in a sector of the station where no one was present. Raphael, desperate, proposed an emergency meeting. With their nerves on edge, they decided to investigate the area contaminated by the faulty air. But upon arrival, they found Daniel, whose whereabouts no one knew, lying motionless on the floor. They tried to revive him, but it was in vain. He was dead. The most macabre detail, his eyes were completely black, as if the light had been sucked out of them. That's when the station's power suffered an abrupt outage, plunging everyone into total darkness for almost 5 minutes, enough time for something indescribable to approach them. When the light was restored, they realized that the door to the communication room was open, something that could never happen without authorization, especially during a blackout. Marina, armed with radiation analysis equipment, entered the room and found something that froze her blood. Ancient inscriptions carved into the metal walls in an unknown language, pulsating with a faint red light, as if they had a life of their own. The invisible presence haunting the station seemed to be trying to communicate, or worse, invade their consciousness. Are you following all this? I know, it's chilling. And now, I want to take the opportunity to invite you to be part of this universe. If you like these stories that stir the deepest fear, that show that the unknown can be anywhere, even in space, then leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these mind-bending stories, and tell me in the comments what your reaction would be if you were stuck in that station with these dark presences. Would you have the courage to face what lies beyond the red veil? I want to hear from you. Let's exchange energy here. The tension was already a constant weight in the air, and now it seemed almost palpable. After the discovery of the inscriptions in the communication room, the team was divided between paralyzing fear and an absurd determination to understand what was happening. But the station, like a living and tortured organism, seemed to feed on this division, intensifying the supernatural phenomena. In the early hours of the 7th day, a piercing scream echoed through the metal corridors. It was Marina. She was found collapsed on the floor of the analysis room, her body racked by violent convulsions, eyes fixed on something no one could see. The team tried to hold her, but it seemed as if something invisible was attacking her from within. Meanwhile, Raphael noticed that the communication logs had been corrupted again, but this time the encoded messages seemed to form words that cut into the mind. Judgment, penance, death. No one could understand, but fear was etched on every face. Lucio, the engineer, decided to investigate the area where the oxygen was low. Upon entering, he felt such a strong presence that his vision blurred. Suddenly, an invisible force brutally threw him against the wall. When his colleagues found him unconscious, he was muttering in a strange, unknown language. He was no longer the same. The situation worsened by the minute. It was no longer just a phenomenon, but an active force, an entity that seemed to drain the sanity of each one. Helena, who was trying to decipher the symbols, realized that they were not mere inscriptions, but an ancient warning, a curse cast by a lost civilization that had been destroyed for trying to cross forbidden boundaries of space and time. When the team decided they could no longer passively wait, Raphael proposed a desperate plan: destroy the equipment that seemed to be the focus of the presence. But the attempt was a total failure. At the moment of destruction, the lights went out, and whispering voices began to fill the crew's ears, a cacophony of lamentations and threats. In the darkness, a shadow materialized, tall, skeletal, eyes black as abysses, and an aura that consumed all hope. One by one, the crew members began to disappear mysteriously, leaving only traces of blood and muffled screams. Gradually, Raphael realized that they were not dealing with a simple phenomenon, but with an ancient entity, thirsty for retaliation, imprisoned for millennia in a dimensional rift created by that very station. It was the vengeance of a forgotten universe and the price for human curiosity. What remained of the team was little more than a handful of terrified souls. Raphael, Helena, and Marina were the only survivors, but Marina's body was growing weaker, as if the very darkness haunting the station was consuming her from within. The air was heavy, charged with a sinister silence, interrupted only by the distant echoes of something that should not be there. That night, Raphael felt a presence beside him, a cutting cold that chilled him to the soul. A voice, low and hoarse, whispered his name, promising him redemption if he surrendered his spirit to the veil that covered that forgotten place. He resisted, but knew at that moment that the fight was far greater than he could bear. Helena, clutching an old diary found among the station's wreckage, tried to find a way to banish the entity, but the words written there revealed a terrifying truth. The entity could not be destroyed, only imprisoned again, and for that, someone would have to remain forever as a sentinel, a voluntary prisoner on the threshold between worlds. With no other alternative, Raphael made the choice he knew to be his destiny: to offer himself as a sacrifice to save the last vestiges of humanity that still dared to explore the mysteries of the cosmos. As he recited the ancient words, a red light flooded the station, and the entity began to retract, its scream echoing for all eternity. Marina, already on the verge of death, held Raphael's hand, murmuring words of gratitude and regret. Helena, alone, watched the last flicker of light before the station plunged into complete silence. She managed to transmit a final message to Earth, warning of the dangers lurking in the depths of space and the unknown that should never be disturbed. But, as always happens, the message was considered delusional, a horror story too scientific to be accepted. And so, the station remained, isolated, a floating tomb in the infinite void, guarding secrets no human should know. The red veil continues to cover that region, where lost voices whisper secrets of a forgotten past and a vengeance that never rests. Now, before I conclude, I want to invite you, who are watching, to join our community. Tell us in the comments if you've ever felt something inexplicable, or if you have a story that kept you awake. I really want to know what you thought of this account, what it made you think or feel, because stories like this aren't just to scare, but to remind us of the limits we perhaps should never cross. If you like the video, please subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss the next stories, and become part of this universe of mysteries and terror with us. Here you are not just a spectator, you are part of a community that lives and breathes the supernatural. Until the next story, and be careful what you decide to uncover.